thought that what we would do is start with one that's for the panel in general, so that everyone has a chance to express a few words. And that question would be, what has to happen to change the mindset about tapping the talents of older people? What would you suggest? What needs to happen to change the mindset about tapping the talents of older people? So can we start with you, Frank? And we'll work our way down.
Okay, I would say we have to make the good cases visible. So we need to show, to prove, like Max says, thousands of people doing the job already. It's just not visible. It's on the agenda. So it's pure communication to really work on the Asian section.
I'll echo Frank's comments. I had two specific versions. I think we need a new way to describe people's roles in the spirit of life. Bob Butler, the famous gerontologist, geriatrician, talked about the elder function as a role that older people could play. But I particularly favor Chip Conley, who's a guy who started a hotel chain and then went to work at Airbnb in his 50s, talks about being a modern elder, in which he was an intern at Airbnb learning a whole new field. At the same time, he was mentoring the founders of the organization. And I love that kind of duality. And at a much broader level, from Frank just talked about the dependency ratio, why don't we have an abundancy ratio? You know, the dependency ratio is all based around the needs of older people, but I wonder if we could come up with a calculus of the assets of the older population and show how, you know, some countries have a higher abundance ratio. And I think some of these, you know, rethinkings and rephrasings could make a big difference.
To me, I think what is needed is to introduce the intergenerational programs that bring together older people and young people so that they can change their attitude and their behavior against older people. Because when we involve the youth, they will understand the challenges facing older people. And when they understand, because we know that these young people are the ones who will be in decision-making positions. So when they be planning, making decisions, they will consider the issues of older people.
I think there needs to be some sort of institutional center advocacy for this population. You know, if you look at other economic groups, other trends, there's usually some sort of core group that's promoting it, lobbying for it, and to date there really is not this in this area.
And just end this by making a plug for more and better data on older persons to help us better understand the reality of older persons' many roles and contributions to society.
Thank you. We have someone who said they wanted to be sure to say thank you for amazing speakers and for the passion that you have on tapping the talents of older adults. But in addition to the themes that were highlighted, this person is asking about your thoughts on access to health care as people age. How do we promote geriatric care for the aged, knowing that we're going to need a large number of care providers, of geriatricians, with very few people in the actual pipeline. So again, the entire panel doesn't need to answer that, but perhaps Mark, you'd like to start, and then anyone else would like to address that. Procedure start?
Germany, we are quite lucky because we have a pretty good social security system, so we have a long-term care insurance and health. So we have the system, but we have a lack of caregivers. So there's different dimensions, and in the case of Germany, I could say we really need more nurses and professional caregivers, but we have systems that are running, so maybe it's one of the ordinary problems in Germany.
Mark, this is one for you. What types of cultural and social innovations can start building? What can we start building now? Are there specific offerings, services, resources that will have an impact immediately? Thank you.
Well, I'm partial to tapping institutions that are already playing these kinds of roles. So, in the talk I mentioned that idea of higher education playing a new kind of role for people at this juncture. And I think there's I remember my former board chair was one of the founders of Elder Hostel, and he used to recount how much bewilderment he'd get when he talked about the role Elder Hostel could play in the early days. And a few years later, it was a $200 million a year NGO that had not only helped millions of people itself, but had triggered a whole revolution in education where all these lifelong learning programs were getting started, and people are actually adjusting their life goals to retire earlier so that they could learn. And so I think some of these institutions like higher education could really play a critical function. I think there's a great opportunity also for public policy and for financial services. So one idea is, instead of having individual retirement accounts where the retirement is the goal, this kind of disengagement, having individual purpose accounts, which could help people spend a year or two transitioning into doing an internship, going back to school, even taking a break. And we've been involved with a project that AARP has led, which is on social security innovation. That picks up on something Frank was just mentioning. And one of the ideas we worked on with Deb Whitman from AARP was the idea of being able to take an early year of social security to pay for going back to school, to become an entrepreneur, to launch a new chapter, and then you defer your full eligibility for Social Security at an actuarially adjusted period later. So I think that there's this whole realm of creativity that we can start tapping, but we're not yet trying to do that.
Thank you, Mark. And Ed, this one is for you. How can young people connect to senior entrepreneurs to create social impact? Is there a platform to support the connection?
Not that I know of, but I do think that this trend towards co-working spaces, towards shared office spaces, is a really good way for people to create these entrepreneurial teams, for younger entrepreneurs to look for older entrepreneurs who can give them some mentoring and experience, for older entrepreneurs to find someone who can add the tech component perhaps, and the social media component, and to become a partner and sort of deal with succession issues. So I do think this trend towards working in close proximity with other entrepreneurs will have a positive effect on this issue.
Thank you. And this one is for Frank Livingstone, and they said I could even weigh in if I wanted to. Are you aware of programs outside the U.S. that engage older adults in volunteer work? In Germany, who would organize the older volunteers? In Africa, we know there's many intergenerational activities that occur, so how do we go about that? So are you aware of programs outside the U.S. that engage older adults in volunteer work?
Well, there are two types, so to say. There are organizations that are totally ageless, so they don't care in a good manner how old you just reach out to everyone, they don't have a limit. And there are some programs and some foundations who are working to empower the culture of working with seniors specifically. But I don't think there's a dedicated senior more integrated in the normal programs that I prefer, because I think it's Mark said, some cities are a good idea. We have the senior volunteer work and junior, so why don't we have just intergenerational work?
Thank you. I know of the VSO, Overseas Volunteers Organization in UK, have been sending volunteers in Africa, and our organization, we have received more than 40 volunteers who have been volunteered at our office since 1995 to date.
I did need to comment when you mentioned some cities that some of the work that we've done with other countries included a while when several years ago the Netherlands had a countrywide initiative to make the Netherlands an age-friendly country. And I remember one of my colleagues called me one day from the Netherlands, and he said, Donna, I'm so upset they want to build a sun city in the Netherlands. Don't they realize we have no sun?
Just maybe would like to add that there was a project from Wikipedia Germany to really work with seniors to become also Wikipedia. I think in each and every country we should ensure that Wikipedia get pressure from senior groups to invite them to translate to become also, because you lose so many knowledge each and every day when seniors die. So it's really important for us to work with Wikipedia to get all the knowledge somewhere stored.
Thank you. And I would just add that at the Generations United Biennial International Conference, we had last year about 12 countries represented, and many academic groups, as well as, for example, the government of Singapore, as Mark was mentioning, are engaging in intergenerational activity. And the important thing is that we lead that together. And I know there's an effort here at the UN to start an intergenerational committee, so I would encourage you to look at that. So we would have the family, children, youth, and aging focal points and be able to work together and promote a shared agenda. So as we're coming to a close here, what I wanted to do was to ask the panelists to take just one last minute, or 30 seconds each, and make any last comment that you would like to make in closing. And brief is always good.
Just one simple thing, just do it. I mean, we talk a lot, we get a lot of inspiration, and also I think each of you have to get an idea how you can use it in your own field. And people are willing to participate, seniors are waiting to be more active, so something.
Sarah? I just want to reiterate my thanks for being able to come to this very important event and to use this opportunity to launch our highlights publication. I hope that if the data and materials are useful to you, that you will visit the website of the Population Division and utilize the resources we have there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mark?
I want to say, this can sound daunting, and stepping into the future can sound a distant future, but in a lot of ways, it's just doing something that's natural, that used to happen all the time, and that we worked heroically to undo. And as I've been going around the world, I feel like it's almost this is a kind of progressive nostalgia, finding new ways to do old things, adapting things that really worked in the past, and bringing the generations together in productive roles by older people, but in ways that fit our, crazy modern family world. But I think that instead of trying to fight against something, we're actually trying to return to something that goes with the grain of humanity.
Thank you. Ed?
I'm very impressed that this event is going on. About 10 years ago, I'm not plugging this, but I wrote a book on senior entrepreneurship. And I got no attention for it whatsoever. In fact, the AARP wouldn't even review it. I've been sort of in a state of depression about the subject for a long time. But over the last couple of years, I see it's getting much, more and more attention, which I think is fantastic. So I think it's really a positive trend here. And the fact that this is organized and it includes business activities of these populations is all for the better. I think this is just going to get more and more attention as it goes along.
Thank you. Livingston?
A point I would like to make is that we need to speed up the UN Convention for the Rights of Older People and the EU protocol ratified in order to realize the strategic development goal principle of leaving no one behind.
Thank you. And I would just add, given that this has been a fabulous session where there have been many films recommended, from The Intern to The Most Exotic Marigold Hotel, one of the things we recommended in a report we did recently was we said you can change your government, you can change this, you can change that. The most important thing you can do is make sure you have a friend that is younger than you and a friend that's older than you. And so I'd like to encourage everyone to grab that younger or older friend and go see a film that just came out called Victoria and Abdul. And if you're familiar with it, it's Judi Dench, who is in her 80s playing Queen Victoria at the end of her life. And she befriends a young Indian servant And what's wonderful is that she is the pupil and he is her teacher. And the energy, the excitement about life, the spirit that comes through in that relationship is absolutely fabulous. It really demonstrates what we know about the importance of generational connections, which is that they benefit all of us. So please join me in thanking our panel today.
Thank you, panelists, for a very stimulating conversation. Now I would like to introduce Lydia Dravek, Vice Chair of the General Assembly's 8th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. In addition to this important position, Ms. Dravek also serves as a human rights expert at the Slovenian Mission to the United Nations. Before coming to New York, she worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia, covering humanitarian assistance and international development cooperation issues. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Dravek.
Thank you very much. I have to admit that the organizers first invited me to deliver on behalf of the Open-Ended Working Group's key remarks during this closing session. Also, in a way, summarizing a little bit today's discussion, of course I felt very honored, but the moment of pride was quickly replaced by a moment of panic. How exactly to summarize this rich discussion today? The sheer volume of information presented here. In only a few minutes, I'm actually given to deliver this statement. What is more important and what should be re-mentioned again? To me, everything or most of the issues raised today are important. They are part of my future and they are already reality for my parents and for my grandparents. About halfway through this discussion, I realized this in many ways feels like a follow-up or even an addition to the discussions we had in July at the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. So what I'm going to do is to also briefly summarize the last session for you, and you'll quickly note the similarities between both discussions. To me personally, this is encouraging. It shows that there is a wide recognition and common understanding about the positive contribution older persons can bring, as well as challenges they are facing in their daily lives. Looking for solutions to overcome these problems and challenges, and with that enabling older persons to really tap into their talents and contribute fully to society, will not only enable older persons to step into their future, but also whole societies and especially younger generations to address challenging questions of today. The human experience, the accumulated wisdom, and the unique perspective of older people can be a key and a unique lens through which younger generations can view their own lives and together look for solutions to today's unique and global challenges. So I'm happy to report that at the 8th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, we also had rich discussions on how to enhance the contributions of older persons to social development, but we also addressed issues such as equality and non-discrimination, and violence, neglect, and abuse. Due to limited times to remain for this event, I'm not going to go into details of these discussions, but I would encourage you all to visit the website of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, and where you can find more information on the discussions that took place. Let me just point out a few general observations, also reflected in the chair's summary of the session, but most importantly, you notice similarities with today's discussion. Many delegations in the working group recognize the importance of considering older persons as an active group which can make significant contribution to social development, as long as certain guarantees are in place to allow for their full participation in society. Older persons were identified as both agents and beneficiaries of change, and in that sense, delegations make reference to the need to fully empower older persons as a means to allow and promote their full participation and contribution to sustainable development. On the interactive discussion on equality and non-discrimination, delegations talked also about structural ageism and prejudice against older persons and how it is perceived in society, in law, in policies and in practice, and leads to exclusion and discrimination of older persons. In the discussion on violence, neglect and abuse against older persons, it was made evident by the delegations and panelists that this phenomenon can take many forms, from physical and financial to psychological, social, sexual abuse, etc., and can take place in different settings. Many delegations also refer to the case of violence against older women who suffer from multiple and intersecting forms of violence and discrimination, as we also heard today here. Within both discussions, delegations addressed pros and cons of a possible new legally binding instrument. So, as you can see, and it was also evident here today, there are still many questions to be answered and many issues to be discussed in the open-ended working group on aging. So what are the next steps for the working group? The working group will continue to have focused discussions at its next session in 2018. As was proposed by the chair during the 8th session, the next session will hold discussion on autonomy and independence and long-term and palliative care. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the chair of the open-ended working group on aging, permanent representative of Argentina to the United Nations here in New York, and the whole Bureau, allow me to express our gratitude and appreciation for the support of delegations, the UN system, and the civil society for the work of the working group and for their substantive contributions. We look forward to your continuing participation in the work of the open-ended working group on aging, and look forward to greet you at the next session in 2008. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dravic, for a very stimulating remark. Now I'd like to introduce Rosemary Lane, who is the Senior Social Affairs Officer at UNDESA and the UN Focal Point on Aging. Previously, she served in the Department of Technical Cooperation for Development and the UN Drug Control Program in Vienna. She focused on aging issues after that for a number of years and served as a member of the Secretariat for the Second World Assembly on Aging in 2002. She was the principal contributor to the drafting of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, or called MIPA, which was adopted in 2002. She also promoted the implementation of the Plan of Action on a national level and the provision of technical assistance to member states. Working across the UN system, she has also championed the inclusion of age perspective in relevant policy areas and supports the open-ended working group on aging as a way of strengthening the protection of the human rights of older persons. Please join me in welcoming Rosemary Lane.
Thank you very much. I think my remarks will probably be shorter than my introduction because I'm also going to close the program. So I want to thank all of our speakers for very stimulating discussions today, presentations and discussions. And for me, it served as a reminder to actually hear examples of, and a reminder of what older people are actually doing as entrepreneurs. We often talk at the UN about how we're going to enhance the contributions of older people, but it serves as a reminder that many older people are already contributing. And so our job is how to enact policies or help governments discuss how they will enact policies to take advantage of the skills of older people more fully. And it was a very stimulating discussion. I would just really like to thank the NGO Committee on Aging. In the words of the ASG for UN Women, it's headed by a bunch of radical women, I think, and some men, but a lot of radical women. But the UN Programme on Aging, we're very thankful to them for the many years that they really put this event together. It takes many months of work. They do work with our office, but they do an incredible amount of work each year to put this event together. I always say that colleagues in my division who work on other social groups are very jealous because we have such a very well organized NGO committee on aging that does this and does a huge amount of work for us. So thank you very much. And with that, I would like to close the program for this year. And I know that in about 3 months, they'll be knocking on our door and we'll be discussing the program for next year. So thank you very much, and thank you for everybody who attended the event today. Thank you.
On behalf of Sandy and myself, I'd like to thank the following people for contributions to the 2017 UN IDOP Celebration of Older Persons. We'd like to thank all of our wonderful speakers, our 3 panelists, our keynote speaker, Sarah Hertog, Rosemary Lane, and Lydia Drovic, our moderator, Donna Butts, Janet Siegel, the chair of the NGO Committee on Aging, the UN IDOP Planning Committee, all of the volunteers and interns. And now I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Sandy Taylor.
And I have 2 announcements to make. We have a reception immediately following the program, and many of you have signed up for that. There's still an opportunity if you're interested in going to attend it. It will be held in a beautiful room overlooking the skyline of New York in the AARP offices. It is a fundraising reception. So if you are interested in coming, those of you who haven't registered, just bring a check for $65 and we'd be very happy to have you join us to help support the work of the NGO Committee on Aging. And then my second announcement is that we have some people who have mobility issues, and for a smoother exit, we'd like you, if you would wish, to stay near the door and we'll escort you out. And for all the other people, please leave the way you came, which is upstairs through the other floor and the other entrance. So I want to thank you also for coming. I think it's been a great program, and I think we are inspired, at least I am, to make the future now and do something, as Mark said, that's a natural inclination for us in our later years to really make a difference in our communities and with our future generations. So thank you very much.